A virtual hearing went on a controversial topic, striking the religious exemption for children's immunizations. The public discussion held online because of COVID, impassioned debate on both sides, nearly 2,000 people signing up to speak online, but only several hundred were able to give their testimony, and that sparked criticism from several Republican members of Connecticut's Public Health Committee. They join us now to explain their concerns and what happened exactly. Senator Heather Summers from Groton and Senator Tony Hwang from Fairfield on The Real Story this morning. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
All right, so let's start with you, Senator Summers. This hearing, although someone else on the Public Health Committee says it was a marathon, it was one of the longest hearings they said that they ever had, that the state's ever had. But what are your concerns with it?
Well, I think both Senator Hwang and I, along with our Republican colleagues, have real issues with the process in this particular case. This is a very controversial bill. We've heard this last year, so I can say for myself that I've now experienced the two longest public hearings in Connecticut history. Last year was 22 hours. This is 24 hours. But the issue here is we had 2,000 people signed up to speak. My colleagues, along with myself, were willing to sit for as long as it took so that the voices of the people of the state of Connecticut could be heard. And our Democratic colleagues decided that 24 hours was the limit for them. So we only heard 226 people. That left over 1,500 people not be able to come in person and have their grievances or their desires or their opinions be heard about this really controversial bill. Now, the Democrats will say, well, look, you can submit written testimony, but it's just not the same. People have the right in the state of Connecticut to come in front of us and have their grievances and their voices be heard. There's over 3,500 pieces of written testimony on this particular bill. That's the issue. We actually made a motion along with my colleagues to stay as long as it took. There's no reason why public hearings can't take a recess and then come back after a recess to continue the hearing and have people's voices be heard, but that was not what was on the agenda for the Democrats this past week.
Senator Hwang, what happens moving forward? I mean, is it a done deal? We don't hear anymore and then it gets voted on, or could you schedule another hearing?
Jen, thank you for having me, and welcome to the new world of Zoom technology, right? I wish I was in the studio. I hope it's not over, and as the new co-ranking Senate member of the Public Health, I was really eager to learn and hear testimony from all the impacted shareholders on this issue. But that's what we do in a representative government, right? That should be for the people, by the people, regardless of where you stood on this emotional issue. But unfortunately, the only loser in this whole process was representative government. We didn't have people voice their opinion. When just over 200 people testified, when nearly 2,000 people signed up, how could you truly listen to all the viewpoints? I know the chair talked about you can read the over 3,500 written testimonies, but what we saw in the public hearing were emotion, authenticity, and the real genuineness of that human connection that you can't get from written testimony. So we were ready to stay there as long as was necessary, because that's what we were elected to do.
Are you both supportive of the bill in general, or are you not supportive of it? Senator Summers, let's start with you.
Well, I think the bill, although probably well-intended, has so many flaws in so many areas that are just not well-defined. It was striking that if this is such a critical issue at this point in time, we did not hear from the commissioner or the acting commissioner of public health, and we did not hear from the Department of Education. Those two are absolutely critical in this bill. What this bill does is take those that have a religious exemption, and I want to be clear, many of the people that are taking a religious exemption may be missing one or two vaccines out of the series of vaccines because of their religious beliefs. Most of them are not having no vaccinations at all. So those children, if they were not vaccinated on those particular vaccines they're missing, will be displaced and forced out of school. The issue that we have is if you look at the data, which is very flawed, there are schools that are falling below the vaccination rate we would like to see, but those are not schools that are taking exemptions. So you will be forcing people out of school for their religious beliefs, but you're really not doing anything to increase the vaccination rate. There's also a grandfathering clause here that if you're in 7th grade and above and you have a religious exemption, it's okay. But if you're 7th grade and below, it's not okay. And it's difficult for many of us to understand if this is a public health crisis, and how can you grandfather half of the people and say it's okay, but the other half, it's not okay. The other thing is there's no detail in this bill as what happens to those students that are displaced. Does Connecticut then teach them at home by virtual? You know, who's responsible for the expulsion process? Who pays for that? Does that go to the town or to the state? And what do we do about those who are just non-compliant? They just don't submit the paperwork. We heard from school nurses talking about how their job is overwhelming if they have 1,000 students in the school. They're the ones that are in charge of keeping the records up to date. And there's sometimes a lag between the paperwork and when the children get the vaccines. There's no consistency in the formula on how they submit the data. So there's so many things that need real attention here, and just passing something to get rid of a religious exemption is not the way to increase the vaccination rates.
Senator Hwang, are you on board with what she just said?
Well, you know, as I said earlier, I was new to the committee as a ranking member, and I was eager to learn. But unfortunately, the process was shortened and denied. We heard much information that we were trying to process from physicians, from community advocates, et cetera. But unfortunately, we didn't get the information we had. One thing that struck with me was a very well-respected physician, when asked if there was an immediate urgency to having this issue addressed, he said there wasn't. And you know, this is an issue that we've discussed many years going on, and to rush it during this time when we're so limited with the person-to-person interaction, and as you can see by my video, technology is not always fully functioning, as many of the people in your audience can relate to, is the challenge. Why have a meeting of this scale? Why address issue of this scale when you're not giving the representative process? That's frustrating to me. And we're going to look at devil being in the details, but we don't have all the details. And it feels as though that it's almost an orchestrated decision-making process. We're going to rush this through. We're going to get a decision done. And in the dark of night, under this lack of transparency and lack of representative government, we're going to make decisions that are going to impact people's lives. That's my biggest frustration. We don't know the information in its complicity, in its completeness, but we're making decisions that impact people's lives. That's just not transparent democracy. And the timing couldn't be more terrible. I mean, technology has created such havoc, as you're seeing in my video screen flashing in and out. I feel like a video game, Jen.
Listen, we can hear you. That's what's important. We can hear you, kind of see you. We're not exactly sure where you are. You're appearing and disappearing. I'm kidding. You're fine. You know, talk about not perfection. I just was looking at the bottom of the screen and realizing that it said State Senator Tony Hwang Groton, and I want to make sure that we know that State Senator Tony Hwang, you are in Fairfield. That's who you represent, and State Senator Heather Summers represents Groton. So just a clarification there. Apologize for that. Really quick, because we are basically out of time, but Senator Summers, I want to just quickly talk with you about teachers and prioritizing them, because this is such a big topic here. You're on the Vaccine Advisory Committee here in Connecticut. The governor saying that in the next couple, maybe week, he's hoping to open up Phase 1B for essential workers. Is that going to be prioritized? Are teachers going to be just kind of lumped in with essential workers, or will it be like open up Phase 1B essential workers, teachers only?
Well, that's a great question, Jen. And I had a forum last night with the CEA, and that was a question that was prevalent throughout the conversation. I want to make sure everyone knows teachers are a priority. They have always been a priority. Our issue in the state of Connecticut is our allocation committee has really focused on those who are most vulnerable. Where are the deaths from COVID? And if you look from 65 and above, that accounts for 89% of the deaths from the disease. So that's why the decision has been made to do it by age until now. Now, the governor has just said in the next couple weeks, we hope to open up essential workers and those that have comorbidities between 16 and 64. What the issue is here right now is the allocation of vaccine to the state of Connecticut. We just don't have enough coming from the federal government to be able to open it up to everyone. So the decision has not been made yet as to exactly the essential workers, if it will be everyone or if it will be certain categories within the essential workers. We don't know that information yet. The allocation committee provides, details and advocates for different groups that they think are should be prioritized. prioritized. However, the final decision really lies with the governor and the DPH commissioner to make that determination. What we don't want to do is open up all of 1B at one time and not have enough vaccine so people are waiting 6 months to get an appointment. It just doesn't work. So that's why I will tell people that Connecticut is doing an amazing job getting the vaccine we have into people's arms. We're number 3 in the country of doing that. We want to continue on that trajectory. We just need more vaccine from the federal government. And we're hoping with 2 new vaccines that are going through clearance right now through the FDA to get the EUA clearance, that this will be coming very soon.
All right.
And if I may add to that quickly, is that I want to reiterate a sense of urgency to get our teachers vaccinated, because it is about getting our kids back into school. The dynamic of social emotional learning and the real challenge that all of our families and students are not being in school is near crisis mode. So I would implore the governor and all the advocates to put our teachers and our school staff higher up on the vaccination list so we can get our kids and our families back to some form of structure and back into school. There can't be a more important issue right now to getting our students back into school.
All right, State Senator Tony Hwang from Fairfield, State Senator Heather Summers from Groton. Thank you both so much for being here for this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All right, that does it for us on The Real Story. You can watch these segments again. Head to fox61.com or download the Fox 61